Hi guys, Joe here and welcome to 750 Gaming. In this one we'll be jazzing up an Invader ATV. So, to the Invader ATV then, the much maligned, Primaris-ified successor to the classic Space Marine attack bike. With the advent of Primaris Space Marines we got Outriders, bigger, bulkier bikers with chainswords. But then cameth the Invader ATV. I don't know. It wasn't particularly well received, in popular circles at least. I didn't think it was too terrible, but I've taken a fair while before I've invested in one, because whilst not terrible, it's not great, to my taste at least. But it's taken that fair while for me to work out what I didn't actually like about it. But I worked it out, so here's my take and my fix on the Invader ATV. So, to my mind, there's two things that I think are wrong with it. The first one is the pose, not the sculpt, not the concept, not the fact it's kind of just two bikes stuck either side of a cockpit, like something you'd see in a soapbox race, or it looks like something you'd drive in Mario Kart. No, that's fine. For me, it's the pose. Now, I've seen a lot of people talk about ride height and seen a fair few conversions for that, and I get it. For an all-terrain vehicle, it doesn't seem to have an awful lot of ground clearance, but, maybe it's supposed to be zooming really fast in a straight line, and the Mechanicus aerodynamics have created loads of downforce, compressing all the suspension and sucking it into the ground, or whatever. Or maybe it's just been mislabeled. The Outriders are not exactly riding trail bikes after all. They're not going over all-terrain per se, so name aside, why would you expect this thing to? But I think for me it's deeper than that. To me it's just very, very vanilla. It's just dull. Everything is pointed straight forward. The driver, forward. The gunner, forward. And it's push fit, which of course has its benefits for sure, but also many drawbacks. So, let's get converting. My idea is to have this thing going about its business mid-turn, not just going straight. So, mid-turn, I could just change the wheels to point in a direction for sure, but what about if we're travelling at speed? Then we have G-forces to consider. Let's get shifting then. The gunner on top is the trickiest bit of work. He's standing straight up, facing forward, so to give him some sort of pose so that it looks like he's been thrown around by the cornering, we need to cut some leg and shift his torso, and that also means the gun has to move where it's aiming, and then there's some arm modification we need to do. Yeah, we'll just bother with the one arm for now. I've got plans for the other, don't worry. We also need to convert the driver up too. We won't be going around no corners if we're not turning the handlebars, so let's mod him up as well. I had to cut away some of his butt in his seat, but we're not going to be seeing any of that. We'll just see the lean. Now, believe it or not, the 4 cuts that we needed to change the direction of the wheels are actually probably the easiest thing to do on this model, but there's still some more that we can do to convert it further. If you're driving around a corner, particularly at speed, you get body roll, where the suspension of your vehicle compresses on the outside, naturally, and decompresses on the inside, with all the weight shifting. Well, we've said that this ride height issue is to do with the downforce compression, so let's leave the outside as it is and focus on maybe raising the inside to visibly indicate some decompression. This was perhaps trickier than it should have been due to me breaking my precision knife blade and having to use one that wasn't really fit for purpose, but we neatened it up and we got there. This is looking much more dynamic and I like where it's going. But this is not just any ATV. This will be riding in along with my white scars, so it needs some accessorizing. And whilst I had to think to work out where and how I was going to add some flavour to this, I needed some refreshment. This is a very nice drop of porter, by the way. Anyway, on to the jazzy bits. Now, I've modelled this with the Gatling cannon because it does kind of look pretty cool, but let's be honest, I'll be running it with a multi-melter a lot, I reckon. So let's strap that other gun to the side so It's there for any WYSIWYG lawyers. Looks like it's ready to be hot swapped at any moment should our gunner decide the battlefield situation requires it. And of course, we're White Scars. We go hunting. A big animal skull on the front seems fitting. I nicked a chainsword in the scabbard from my Black Templar's bits box and stuffed that on the side and gave our unbalanced gunner one in his other hand to flail away with because it kind of feels right. And then it's all about heads. I had previously used all the third-party head faces I'd purchased for my White Scars, so we had to get creative. There's a head here from an Eliminator with snood type thing and goggles. That'll work for the driver. And then I had another spare Reaver head that I thought the gunner could use, and it looks a bit more Mad Maxy. Okay, so on to my second and more niche and kind of weird bugbear, that this thing doesn't have a base. I am a big fan of a base, not necessarily a good one. My basing tends to be relatively basic. If you're an important Space Marine, you'll get a tactical rock. Otherwise, you're just getting some classic sand and a nice complementary or contrasting colour. The terrain that my White Scars maraud around upon, for instance, is nice and yellow, which helps the white and red pop. Lovely. And contrary to other people's tastes, it doesn't break my immersion to see them on bright yellow basings when clearly not battling on a bright yellow battlefield. Nope, that's okay. What does break my immersion, however, is this thing without one. Without a base, it kind of just looks like a toy, which, yep, okay, let's be honest, it is. But if it's a tabletop toy, it should have a base to fit in with all the other tabletop toys. Unless it's a tank. Yep, good, right, whatever. And so I've plucked for a 100mm base, which seems to work really nicely, covered it in sand, and I'm going for a big rock here to the side so it looks like we've sped around the corner and clipped it like a big curbstone. And when we've painted this all up, it's gonna work. I hope. Let's get some paint on it, and then we'll see. I prime in grey, as is my wont for most things that aren't black, and I use a nice cheap acrylic automotive primer. This can came from Home Bargains here in the UK and cost me £1.99 and it just works. Now, the big trick with painting white, of course, is to not paint white. I have neither the skill nor the patience to upskill in order to paint a pristine pure white miniature, let alone an army full of them. So, in full disclosure mode, my White Scars are dirty and grimdark and all sins are hidden. I start by base coating. I use Citadel paints, you don't have to, but for all the bits I want to be white, I use my favourite not white, Wraithbone. The metally bits I do with Leadbelcher, all my leathers and bits I tend to do with Rhinox hide, and all the trims and weapon casings and all of that stuff are Mephiston red. My black bits are Abaddon Black. Any grey, like that big rock on the base, will be Celestra Grey, and the yellow is Avalan Sunset. And lastly, my base skin tone will be Kislev Flesh. I slightly thin down with water and I slap it on. Now you'd be forgiven for questioning my method here. I sure did. Why didn't you paint in sub-assemblies, you numpty? It's push fit after all. The Marines come out and you can paint everything far easier. Well, yes, it was push fit, until I modified everything and glued it all together again to make sure it stayed in place. Meh. I did knock the multi-melter off, mind you, at least that's one thing that we can paint and fix again separately. But it's alright. We just need to think about the 3-foot rule. It's going to be on the tabletop. If I can't see a detail from 3 feet away, then I'm not overly worried about it. So all of that stuff inside the cockpit, it'll be whatever it's going to be. We don't need to be too neat. The idea is we take the pressure off here and we just get the main white on. And then we get more and more precise as we go on with the smaller details. And then we can come back when they're all done and just neaten up a few of those bits that were less than precise to begin with. And now we're at the so-called ugly stage. But it's okay. Now that we've painstakingly painted on all those lovely base colours, we're going to ruin it all by coating pretty much all of it with Agrax Earthshade. What a mess. Very grimdark. A bit too much grimdark. Time to bring it back up. I dry brush highlight all the white, not white bits again with Wraithbone, and a touch here and there with the lead belcher, then neatly touch up any other areas as needed with the original base colours. I added a few finer details here too, like the console on the driver's handlebars and adding some muzzle burn effect on the gun barrels, and I'm pretty happy with how it's turning out. For the base, Avalan Sunset on the sand, Celestra Grey on the rock, washed again, and then dry brush back up again with Avalan Sunset on the sand. The big rock got, again, a light dry brush of the Celestra Grey, and then I used Wraithbone again, just for a finer little bit of dry brush highlight on the very tops of it. I attach the ATV with a big dollop of super glue on each wheel that is actually making contact with the base, and then I dry brush a bit more of the Avalan Sunset onto the tyres and the body of the ATV itself to really bring it into the base so that it looks like it's covered in dust. A black rim and bosh, we're done and ready for some glamour shots. So there you go, my take on the Invader ATV. Let me know what you liked or disliked in the comment section below. Hopefully it's inspired some of you to glow up your own. I'll be back at some point with another video looking at my White Scars army proper and what I've done to bring them up to the 1000 point mark. After all, I'd left them at 750 points at the end of 9th edition and they needed some work. Hopefully I'll see you then. But for now, thanks for watching. Let's go! Yes, thanks for watching. Do give this video a like and a comment if you enjoyed the content, or indeed otherwise, as I do love to read your thoughts and ideas. As ever, this is just a bit of fun for me. I don't have a regular release schedule or Patreon or anything, so hit subscribe if this is something you'd like to see more of, and you can catch my content when it happens. Hopefully, I'll see you next time.